Good evening, it's 6 o'clock and this is Newsdrive.
The Liberal Democrat leader Jo Swinson has launched her party's election campaign, insisting she's a candidate for Prime Minister, despite going into the election with just 20 MPs. Jeremy Corbyn has been defending his plan to hold another referendum and has promised to get Brexit sorted within 6 months. Here's the BBC's political correspondent, Jessica Parker.
By arguing that it could be a time of seismic political change, Jo Swinson will be hoping to win over voters who may think that the Liberal Democrats don't have a realistic chance of breaking through in their area. And asked whether her party's Stop Brexit message ignored the wishes of millions of voters, she said that they were simply being honest about what they believe in. Meanwhile, the Conservatives and Labour are trying to claim that they can resolve Brexit once and for all. The Tories point to what they see as a good, ready-to-go deal, while in a speech Jeremy Corbyn said that he could get the whole thing sorted by holding a referendum on a renegotiated Labour agreement by next summer.
The Liberal Democrats are to take legal advice to try and force ITV to include their leader, Jo Swinson, in its live election debate between Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn later this month. Ms Swinson said broadcasters who did not involve her in debates were either sexist, scared or both. ITV said it was planning comprehensive and balanced election coverage, including a live debate in which 7 party leaders would be invited to take part.
Boris Johnson has defended his Brexit deal after Nigel Farage called it a sellout and said the Prime Minister should ditch it in favour of a Leave alliance with his party. Mr Johnson told the BBC that his agreement allows the UK to do all singing and all dancing free trade deals around the world. He also rejected Mr Farage and Donald Trump's suggestion that he should work with the Brexit party.
Now, the difficulty about doing deals with any other party is that any other party, I'm afraid, simply risks, or voting for any other party, simply risks putting Jeremy Corbyn into number 10. And the problem with that is that his plan for Brexit is basically yet more dither and delay.
The First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, says she will make a formal request for a second independence referendum before Christmas, regardless of who is Prime Minister. The SNP leader has previously said she would ask for authorisation for the vote by the end of the year. It's been announced the first head-to-head debate between Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn will take place on the 19th of November. It will be on ITV.
Good evening. President Trump has hit out at Jeremy Corbyn on the day that the Labour leader launched his party's election campaign, saying he'd be so bad for the country. Mr Trump made his intervention speaking to the Brexit Party leader, Nigel Farage, on LBC, and he urged Mr Farage to work with Boris Johnson.
You and him will end up doing something that could be terrific. If you and he get together, it's, unstoppable force. And Corbyn would be so bad for your country. He'd be so bad. He'd take you in such a bad way. He'd take you into such bad places. But your country has tremendous potential. It's a great country.
Earlier, Mr Corbyn vowed to transform Britain by taking on the few who run a corrupt system, as he got Labour's election campaign underway. Mr Corbyn promised to rebuild public services and hit out at tax dodgers, dodgy landlords, bad bosses and big polluters. The Shadow Secretary of State for Employment Rights, Laura Peacock, was delighted by Jeremy Corbyn's speech in South London and says it's only right the richest people in society pay more tax.
85% of the population will not pay any more tax. And actually, there are millions of people in in-work poverty, and we also have to save the planet. I'll tell you this now, I've never been as confident or as hopeful that we will be in government. I feel elated after that speech. I feel hopeful.
Jeremy Corbyn and Boris Johnson have gone head-to-head in the last Prime Minister's questions before the general election on the 12th of December. They clashed on the NHS, Brexit and leadership. The Labour leader said voters had the chance to back real change and an end to austerity. But the Prime Minister warned of economic catastrophe and political disaster if Labour got into power. The SNP leader, Nicola Sturgeon, has said the general election is a chance to escape from Brexit and let Scotland decide its own future, while the Liberal Democrat leader, Jo Swinson, said she's ready for the campaign.
We beat both Labour and the Conservatives in the European elections. We have more members than ever before. We have raised more money for this election than ever before. And we have been joined by MPs joining us from both Labour and the Conservatives.